So I want to thank them, everyone who's been cheering me and everyone who was there today and everyone who's been part of my journey. Thank you.
9 days before she even touched a tennis ball in Washington, Alex Eala was standing on a stage in a Makati mall, surrounded by a crowd so thick that security lost count of how many people packed into the venue. This wasn't a tournament. This was a homecoming, because Eala had just finished the biggest fortnight of her career, and an entire country wanted to see her before she left again. Here's what she was coming home from. At Wimbledon 2026, Eala beat Mexico's Renata Zarazua, then came back from a set down to beat Australia's Maya Joint, and then walked onto center court against Iga Swiatek, the defending champion, and beat her too. She became the first Filipino in the Open era to reach the fourth round of a Grand Slam singles draw. She eventually fell to Jasmine Paolini, but by then the record books had already been rewritten, and she flew home to a number 29 world ranking, her career high. So on July 15th, Globe hosted Home Court, a fan meet at the Glorieta Activity Center in Makati City, where Eala serves as an ambassador. The place overflowed. She followed it with a recognition ceremony at Malacanang Palace, hosted by President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., plus a run of brand events with Nike and BPI stacked into the same week. Through it all, one line kept surfacing, first in interviews, then across every group chat in the country. Never been prouder to represent home. Then, on Monday, she wrote it again on Instagram before boarding her flight out, along with a message in Tagalog thanking her Kababayan for every story they had shared with her. That flight was headed to Washington, D.C., for the Mubadala City DC Open, a WTA 500 event running from July 27th to August 2nd. This isn't a soft landing spot. It's a stacked field. Jessica Pegula headlines as the top seed, alongside Alina Svitolina, Naomi Osaka, Jasmine Paolini, Madison Keys, Clara Tauson, and a wild-card entry from Zheng Qinwen. Eala sits in that same draw as an unseeded but very much watched entrant, fresh off the best result of her life. And here's the detail nobody outside tennis circles has fully clocked. The defending champion in Washington is Leylah Fernandez, who beat Anna Kalinskaya 6-1, 6-2 in last year's final. Fernandez is Canadian by birth, Ecuadorian through her father, and Filipino through her mother, Irene Exivia, whose own parents came from Ilocos. Fernandez has spoken openly about embracing that heritage on the biggest stages of her career, dedicating past titles to her Filipino side of the family. So the tournament that Eala is walking into already has a defending champion who carries the same flag she does. Two players with Filipino roots sitting in the same 28-player draw, at the tournament with the largest Filipino-American community of any stop on the entire American hardcourt swing. That is not a coincidence anyone scripted. It's just what the draw sheet looks like this year. Now here's the other name attached to Eala's Washington trip, and it might be the bigger story for casual fans. She's reuniting with Venus Williams in doubles. The two first teamed up at Bad Homburg during the grass season, reaching the quarterfinals together in their debut as a pair. Williams is 46 years old, a 7-time Grand Slam singles champion, a 14-time Grand Slam doubles champion alongside her sister Serena, and she chose to partner with a 21-year-old from Quezon City for a second straight tournament. That's not a courtesy pairing. Legends of that caliber don't need exposure from a rising player. They pick partners because they want to win. Williams picking Eala again, in the city where she's playing on a wild card of her own, says more about where Eala's career currently sits than any headline could. It's also worth putting this trip in context, because Eala didn't arrive in Washington on a hot streak. Her grass season had bumps along the way. She lost in the Berlin Open semifinal to Linda Noskova, and dropped a first-round match in Bad Homburg to Elise Mertens just 2 days before Wimbledon started. None of that traveled with her once the tournament actually began. She turned the disappointment into the best 2 weeks of her career, then turned around and let an entire country celebrate with her before going right back to work. What happens next matters beyond just Washington. After the DC Open, Eala heads into the National Bank Open in Toronto, then the Cincinnati Open, both WTA 1000 events, before the season builds toward the US Open in New York at the end of August, the tri-state area's Filipino diaspora waiting for her there in even bigger numbers than what showed up across the DMV. Every one of these stops is a test of whether her Wimbledon breakthrough was a moment or the start of something sustained. The players who beat her on grass, Noskova, Mertens, are exactly the type of opponent she'll keep running into on hard courts too. The question isn't whether she belongs in these draws anymore. Beating a defending Wimbledon champion answered that. The question now is whether she can turn one great fortnight into a great season. There's also a quieter storyline sitting underneath all of this, and it's about what a rising player from a country with no long tennis tradition does to the sports map. Southeast Asia has never had a marquee singles star on the WTA calendar the way tennis has historically been built around players from the US, Europe, and increasingly China. Eala's rise, paired with a defending Washington champion who also claims Filipino roots, is the first real test of whether that assumption still holds in North America. If the buzz that followed her through Manila translates into visible turnout in the stands at the William H.G. Fitzgerald Tennis Center, it changes how tournament organizers think about scheduling her matches for the rest of the summer. So here's where it stands heading into Monday. A 21-year-old who 2 years ago couldn't get past Wimbledon qualifying is now walking into a WTA 500 event as a career-high number 29, partnered in doubles with one of the most decorated players the sport has ever produced, in a singles draw that includes a defending champion who shares her heritage. She left Manila with a hero's send-off and a message about pride that clearly wasn't just for the cameras. Now she has to go win matches again, against players who have beaten her before, in a city that hasn't fully found out yet how loud it's about to get for her.